Thousands of youth are marching from various parts of Germany to attend a mass meeting of the Nazi Party in Nuremberg. James Luther Adams takes a break from his studies to watch the spectacle unfold and listen to the beating drums and the brassy trumpets. Thousands are gathered. It's the year 1927, 6 years before the National Socialist Party comes to power. And in a lull in action, the Unitarian minister turns to some of the people around him and asks them about the meaning of the swastika. It quickly turns into a heated argument. Some grabs him by the elbows and ushers him out of the quarrel, through the crowd, down a side street, and into a dead-end alley, and then shouts at him in German, "You fool! Don't you know? You either keep your mouth shut or you get your head bashed in." Adams thinks right then and there he will indeed get his head bashed in. But then the man explains, if you would have kept arguing your point, you would have been beaten up. Adams then asks him, "But why did you help me?" "I am an anti-Nazi. And as I saw you there, I remembered when I was in New York City as a sailor for the German Merchant Marine, I received such wonderful hospitality. Here's my chance to pay it forward. Please come to my home for Sunday dinner." His home was an apartment in a tenement in the slums of Nuremberg. To reach it, they climbed 3 flights of stairs, many of the steps rotted out. The apartment door opened into a barren green room. The man's wife and 3 small children greeted their American guest. Adams learned how the man belonged to a trade union which would not bow to the Nazis. And he now found himself out of work, poor and desolate, yet still resisting and welcoming the stranger. Amidst this experience, Adams reflects that he had a chilling question for himself that is still relevant for us today. As an American citizen, what have you done in your typical everyday life that would help to prevent the rise of authoritarian government in your own country? What disciplines of democracy besides voting have you habitually undertaken with other people to affect public policy? Adams noticed that some of the professors he had befriended and studied with were anti-Nazi in theory, but actually did little to nothing. Adams calls this the pseudo-Protestant doctrine of vocation, where someone takes their profession very seriously, whether that be a physician, lawyer, professor, or other worker, but does little to no good outside of their working lives. After serving 2 congregations, Adams accepted the call to be a professor at Meadville Lombard Theological School on the condition that he would study for a year with some of the leading theologians in Europe. So he returned to Germany in the year 1935. Adams spent most of his time with church people who were part of the resistance. He even accompanied a just released from Dachau minister through the Rhineland who spoke courageously and ruthlessly every day against the Nazis. He saw people risk their reputations, their salaries, their freedoms, and indeed their lives. For Adams, it came down to a decision to not be content with apathy. But the free church was being steamrolled by the Nazi machine. Adams was searched and even interrogated by the Gestapo. He narrowly avoided imprisonment. One has to take seriously what Adams saw with his own eyes and the lessons he learned. Throughout his life, Adams dedicated himself to what he called voluntary associations. He started 3 study groups for ministers, regularly volunteered in the Unitarian Association, was on several church boards, but not just religious stuff. He advocated for mill workers' rights in Massachusetts, served on the board of the ACLU, and while in Chicago, worked vigorously with the Independent Voters of Illinois, a grassroots political organization that brought him into contact with liberal politicians of his time, such as Adlai Stevenson. He was involved and so active in transforming the institutions that he became part of that he had little time to assemble his academic writings. His students did that for him late in his life. For Adams, voluntary associations include churches, trade unions, but also businesses, educational associations, recreational, philanthropic, political, and even social clubs. Voluntary associations bring people of differing perspectives and social roots united for a common purpose. Adams was very critical of liberals' emphasis on individualism and individual virtue. He instead emphasized group virtue. This main way is how good happens through history. This is the main way good happens through history. It's in the community that forms in the power of love. Adams knew the first step of fascism is to slowly destroy trade unions, free churches, and other voluntary associations. In the early days of Trump's second presidency, which seems like a lifetime ago, I know, but was really only about 100 days ago, several of us attended a Zoom meeting led by someone from the Cornell Cooperative Extension who specialized in immigrant rights and suspiciously never showed themselves on camera. She was very enthusiastic about leading a Know Your Rights workshop and a second workshop about preparing immigrants for ICE raids. I volunteered the use of our church building for a workshop. Several volunteers were interested, and we looked at specific dates. And just a few days later, all of a sudden, our contact abruptly canceled everything. They did not give a reason why. I could not help but think, though, she was getting directives from her superiors to stop because they did not want to lose federal funding. I have no way to confirm this. I'm just reading between the lines here. There is no doubt in my mind that the Trump administration is trying to destroy voluntary associations that lean left. Now, I don't want to equate Nazi Germany to our current time. That is just too simple and too alarmist. You can get all that kind of stuff from Facebook and social media. Go and do that. Unlike the Weimar Republic of post-World War Germany, we have had a long history of a constitution and democratic institutions. That is not to say that we can just sit and wait for 2 years. We are not on an unsinkable ship. But I do believe what the Irish playwright Oscar Wilde said: the one duty we owe to history is to rewrite it. It would behoove us to learn how authoritarians and fascists rise to power, because they are all about power. And they want to take away from others, especially democratic, left-leaning, voluntary associations. Adams traces the history of the voluntary association to the Radical Reformation, and more specifically, the left-wing Puritans, which, by the way, we Unitarian Universalists trace our history back to. The reformers, these early reformers, wanted to go back to the early church, which transcended ethnic, nationalistic, and familial loyalties. They said that religion should be a choice, not something the state controls and not something forced upon us. Before the Reformation in Europe, you were born into a family, a state, and a church, and you didn't have much choice in it. The first truly voluntary associations, according to Adams, were churches. And according to Adams, then came economic associations, political parties, trade unions, and so on and so forth. These voluntary associations took power away from the state and aimed to break through old ways into new ones. Voluntary associations organized social power and became training grounds for a gradual revolution. No doubt, voluntary organizations have their limits. The state will always have the legal monopoly on the use of power and expel members out of the country and even into prison. Unfortunately, over the past few decades, there has been a dramatic decline in people participating in voluntary associations in our country. We cannot let apathy reign. We need to organize ourselves and claim institutional power. We need to bend the arc of the moral universe towards justice. So I want to be clear as day. Adams' answer on how a U.S. citizen can stand up to authoritarianism is to get on a committee. You get active. You support local voluntary associations like this church, like others in the North Country, other organizations who are working for a lasting common good that goes beyond our lives. We don't fight authoritarianism and fascism alone. We organize, we unite, we bond, we combine our power and resources. The most decisive forms of goodness over history are in groups of people. This ongoing gradual revolution is one of our smooth stones. We believe in the power of voluntary associations, and we engage with them and are part of them. And that prayer without action is not going to get us to the good. Sure, you can be a good friend, a good spouse, but the greater good does not depend on one's individual virtue. Lasting change and good happens with groups of people. Unitarian Universalism has long believed that we are here to shape history and to transform reality. Because good things don't just happen. Bad things don't just happen. People make them happen. Roe v. Wade got overturned because conservatives out-organized us. Virtue is not some magical realm. Societal good takes incarnationality. Incarnationality. I just invented that. It's when real embodied bodies join together in solidarity. It's important to be aware that life is a series of events, outcomes, and horrible outcomes in history. Much of history was formed by groups of people. Individuals are not isolated. That is what consumerism, that is what fascism want us to think. Personal achievement and fulfillment doesn't happen in a vacuum. The sacred ground of good happens in participation and in relationality. Though I am a bit frightened of our federal government's scope, intention, and power, I know this. We still have the ability to organize into voluntary associations, which has always been a distinctive and indispensable institution of democracy. Though we are small in stature, we can indeed defeat the giant bullies of our time, but only with the smooth stones of our faith. So may it be, and amen.